Would you buy this $2.1 million septic company in Texas? This business literally makes money from other people's crap. But today we're not talking about the smell, we're talking about that cash money, baby, that margin. There's a septic company in Texas. It is $1.3 million in revenue, $595,000 in SDE, which is seller discretionary earnings, and the purchase price, $2.1 million. In this breakdown, we're gonna find out if this is a gold mine of reoccurring service revenue or just a pile of crap. So let's get into it. So it's a septic pumping company and tank company in Parker County, Texas. It does maintenance, service, replacements of systems. It was established in 2019, $1.3 million in revenue, $595,000 in seller discretionary earnings, or SDE, which is essentially all the money that, if you take what the owner's personal cash they get at the end of the year, including their insurance, if they use their own car, it's all the add backs, it's their salary. So all that is added back to the EBITDA numbers or the cash flow numbers. It comes with about $400,000 in equipment, which sounds like about 2 trucks and some equipment, maybe a little bit of inventory. It's home-based, meaning that they're not running out of a facility or yard. I'm sure they park their trucks, maybe they take them home because it's rural Texas. No big yard to buy, no big real estate to buy. And then they claim that they have 50 years of combined experience. So what that tells me is that there's like 3 or 4 guys that have about maybe one old timer with 25 years and a few other guys with 5 to 6 years experience, but a decent amount of experience combined between everybody. At first glance, you're looking at a 3.5 multiple of SDE. So for a sub $1 million EBITDA company, that is a premium. It's at the top end of a blue collar service business, but it's not crazy. Especially if the cash flow is real, it's reoccurring, then there is an opportunity here. So we'll keep going. I'm not going to stop just yet. You have to understand, going into it, one of the first things is, what are you really buying? When you buy a septic company, you're not really buying the brand as much as you're buying the relationships, the routes, and the reliability. Yes, the brand is important. Yes, the assets are important, but the assets depreciate really fast, right? Because they're trucks, and pump trucks get beaten up. They're literally running in off-road, people's backyards, down old country roads to get to septic locations. And so the real value sits in the maintenance contracts. And that's those customers that get their tanks pumped every few years. And then as they have an issue, they call you directly. And then eventually you get the replacement option 20 years down the line, 10 years down the line. That's where a lot of it is valuable, as well as the reputation, right? This is a small county. The industry is a small industry. And so reputation matters, because it doesn't take but a few bad reviews to really sink a company, specifically in the home services industries. And then one of the big things that you're buying is the licenses and permits. The license to be able to pump and to work on septic systems with the old owner, as well as in a lot of jurisdictions, what you're buying is the ability to actually dump. Because the wastewater facilities, they only have a certain amount of allocation that they're allowed to pump into the wastewater facility. So being able to buy into that when there's no new wastewater facilities and there's no new contracts available actually allows you to get started a lot faster than if you were to do a startup. And then the last bit is the crew, right? There's one thing, if you're from this industry and you know how to work a pump truck, and you have your CDL, your big truck license, and you know how to do all this stuff. But if you don't, then having the crew it's a crutch to be able to learn and to lean on people who have that 25 years of experience or even 5 years of experience. So if I were looking at this deal, one of my first due diligence items is, how much of this $1.3 million in top line revenue is actually recurring maintenance, or how much of it is one-time installation or emergencies? The emergencies is a great part. I would kind of lump that in with the maintenances, but how much of this is large construction projects? Because if it is 10% maintenance and service and 90% from this guy going out and installing septic for a subdivision, that's a one-time job. And to be able to re-get those contracts every year puts a lot of stress on the owner, versus if you have 600 contracts and you're going to them every couple months or once a year, once every 2 years, you have a route, you have that reoccurring revenue that's pretty sticky. And then if it's that steady work, then yeah, it's probably worth the premium, that 3x-ish multiple. But if it's lumpy and it has 20, 30, 40% of customer concentration or big jobs that are followed by really slow months, that's where the risk is. And then that's where you start discounting the multiple. So if we're looking at the valuation, the seller wants 2.1. That's off 600K in cash flow, 3.5 multiple of earnings. That's rich. Like, that is expensive. For me, it's expensive. For most people, it's probably why it's still in the market and not sold, because that is at the higher end of the multiple spectrum for such a small business. The only time that I would consider that is if it's real and it's documented in terms of the reoccurring customer base, right? Making sure that the customer list is there and solidified, which it should be, because it started in 2019. Most of these companies are 50, 60, 70 years old. And so the not having like a little bit of a wonky customer base that kind of ebbs and flows would make a lot of sense in that business. But in this business, it should be clean, like very, very clean, because it's 5-6 years of data. They should be able to document that in a CRM very, very easily. Making sure that the equipment is new. If the equipment's 6 years old and clean and taken care of, great. Like, that's what you need. You don't want to buy this business and then have to replace 2 trucks in the first year. There goes your $500,000 in net. It's going right into the trucks. And then making sure, lastly, that the owner isn't critical in daily operation, because as he phases out, if he has major contracts and commercial contracts with people, and that relationship is really important because they go to the same church or the same school, or they were from the same small town around Texas, then you're going to run into issues when the owner leaves, because you're going to potentially lose that customer, most likely. If you check all those boxes and it's all perfect, yeah, maybe that 3 to 3.5 is a real number. So once you get past that, you can move into the add backs and due diligence. And it's understanding what the owner or the seller is adding back to consider as SD. A lot of times sellers get a little bit squirrely with this. Sometimes they use their business as their own piggy bank, and they have a $30,000, $40,000 slush fund for Amazon purchases or some weird thing, or maybe construction on their home. That's one we see a lot, is they spent that $30,000 on their home from the business account, and now they want that added back. And so with that, there's a few red flags, is making sure that they're not using the business as the piggy bank, because if they'll lie to the government, they will lie to you. And when they lie to you, it is every dollar is worth $3.5 to them. And so it compounds really fast. So making sure their add backs are very, very tight. I always see that as a very critical option, and making sure that each one of those is been taken care of and you have reconciled that they match up. Next is owner involvement. We already talked about this. Is the owner actually driving the truck and pumping septic and working the backhoe and actually ripping out the septic tanks and putting them back in? Is he the one that knows how to do the engineering behind that? If so, that means that you are going to have to hire somebody to do that if you don't know how to do that. That position costs $80,000 to $100,000 a year. So if the seller added back $80,000 to $100,000 a year in his personal salary, and you are buying this business and you still have to hire someone for $80,000 to $100,000, that goes back the other way, because obviously it needs to. You still have to have that role, because unless you can do it, somebody has to do it. Lastly, we talked about this as well, replacement CapEx, going in and understanding the age of his vehicles, the condition of his vehicles, the condition of his pumps, so that you are not spending 50, 100K month one. You don't want to buy the business, pump truck go down because the owner kind of knew about it, or maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just, hey, it's an old vehicle and it was a roll of the dice. But you don't want to be on the receiving end of that. There's some ways you can do terms to make sure that that's covered, but from a replacement CapEx standpoint of due diligence, just making sure that the easiest thing to do is make sure they're in good condition, right? So now that we're through due diligence, some other risks and red flags that are really easy to look at. Septic is simple until it's not. And the first big one is environmental regulatory risk. So this is great. I didn't pick one from California for a reason, and that's because California recently required that all vehicles above a certain limit have to pass certain emissions, and it pretty much pulled all of the trucks off the road. And so I had a bunch of the guys that were delivering water for us. They had to scramble because they needed brand new trucks because of this regulatory risk. So making sure that the location that you're in doesn't have any kind of up and coming regulatory standards or demands that are pushing in the wrong direction for you. We've talked about equipment condition. A new pump truck costs $200K. 150 to 250,000, depending how nice it is. This is your business, so hey, you have to have it. Make sure it's in good condition. Probably hire a mechanic to do the due diligence on the truck prior to doing it. If it's in bad condition, immediately discount heavily. Labor, making sure that in rural parts of Texas, finding someone who's qualified as an operator to do this job, it's going to be hard, right? Finding someone who's qualified operator who you want to work with, even harder. And then someone who fits in the pay range that you're looking for, even harder. So like all of these things with labor, especially as you kind of get into the rural areas, become more difficult because they're gonna have to drive in from hours away or something of the sort, especially if there's no location like on this business. These aren't necessarily deal breakers, right? Old truck, you adjust price, labor dependence, you adjust price, blah, 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 blah. It's just making sure that you're not paying premium price for a premium business that isn't premium. So go through these on the discovery call. You should be talking to the seller prior to even moving into due diligence about all of these items. And as you kind of work your way through all these items, you kind of start discounting, or you don't, depending on what his answers are. And then the due diligence phase is used to take whatever he told you and match it. Make sure that it is what he says it is. That's the point of due diligence. So opportunity here though, right? There's plenty of it. There's 21 million septic systems in the US, and every single one of them needs to be pumped every couple years. It's not discretionary spending. It's required maintenance. And if you don't do it, your toilets don't work. And I don't know about you, but I really appreciate when my toilets work in my house. So this provides a huge opportunity as the rural areas of Parker County start to explode or start to grow. You can add more trucks, right? Pick up larger routes, do more construction work, or you can move into other counties, right? As you kind of grow with more trucks, you can expand your service area. You can sell maintenance memberships. I think this is an amazing business to sell maintenance memberships. You buy a membership for $200. You probably don't make a ton of money off that $200, but we come once a year and pump your system and double check it to make sure it's good to go. Very worth it. Keeps you at the top of their mind. You see them yearly. They like you. You like them. And when it comes time to service or repair, they only deal with you. When they only deal with you, that means they're not shopping around for the cheapest contractor. They're just going with the contractor that they trust, which is you. And then digital marketing. Most of these businesses do not have any sense of digital marketing. They might have a Google business profile or a Google My Business profile, and it has 3.6 stars and 22 reviews because the only people who have ever reviewed a septic company are pissed off at their septic company. So you start driving traffic through digital marketing, through advertisements, even really scrappy low budget ads and Google work can get you to be one of the top producers for septic in an area. You can add related services, right? You could start doing drainage fields and grease traps and camera inspections. You can move into business to business and do grease trap pumping and cleaning. I know a lot of municipalities require restaurants to have their grease trap pumped once a quarter. There you go. Now you have a contract for 4 times a year at $1,000 each or $800 or $400 each. And then you start to hit the Wendy's and the McDonald's and the Applebee's and every single restaurant in that county and start owning those contracts. And then lastly is route optimization. You start to actually use some sense of route optimization. It sounds silly, but as you're going through those maintenances, making sure that the people in the same neighborhoods are being worked on together at the same time is huge and provides you with the ability to do more calls in one day, but also reduce overhead and expenses. Realistically on this business, I think that you could probably squirrel out another $100,000 to $200,000 in net just by optimization and marketing without even having to increase overhead. But as you start buying those trucks and increasing overhead, I think it comes naturally. So would I buy this business? So here's my honest take. It's expensive. I think at 3.5x, that's a premium price. You would have to make sure this is a premium business with brand new trucks and a really dense route with lots of opportunity to be able to grow out of the debt, because on the back end, that's what you need. You need that growth to get out of the debt so that you can comfortably continue to grow more. So I would buy this, but I would buy it at the right price, because at this rate, with the amount of people, I think it's a dirty job. It's not really a business yet. It is a business, but you're not out of the business. It's not a passive business. So making sure that you're ready for the situation, because it's a dirty job. So I'd only do this if I can get the right price, if the crew mostly stays on, or they had a really competent person who, like a service manager or something, that I could incentivize to stay on for quite a long time. The equipment was in good shape, and there was a decent transitionary period, and the seller would have to hold a note to make sure that that would come to fruition in the way that I need it to. So I'd offer, if it was me, 1.6 million with 5 to 10% down on an SBA 7A note. That's where I'd be. It'd be about 80 to 160,000 down on that percentage, and then I'd probably try to get the seller to hold 10 to 20% of that. Which would help with the down payment, but also help with the entirety of that payment, so that my note would be closer to 1 million with the SBA, and a 1 million note with the SBA would come in about $10, $11, $12,000 a year a month in debt service. Because I think once you get past the smell of this business, it's actually a solid business. So would you buy this $2.1 million septic company in Texas? Drop your numbers that you would buy this at in the comments below. I'm Jack from Jackquisitions. We break down deals of real businesses in real time that you could actually own. I'll see you in the next one.